Hi students, this is Miss Andrist. So today we're doing math, and for math we're going to work on doing some measurements, and then we're going to graph our measurements on a line plot. So the first thing we need to do is measure. Today we're going to be measuring our fingers from the crease or that bottom knuckle where it bends all the way to the tippy top, not including the fingernail. So let's do it. You'll need a ruler or a measuring tape. So I'm going to take my measuring tape and I'm going to put it right on that little crease and then measure it all the way up to the little tip of my finger. And I'm going to do that for all of my fingers. So I measured all my fingers and I wrote my information down in inches and I wrote it in my notebook. Then you're going to need a little bit more data. So then you can go measure the other fingers in your household. So go find like your mom or your sister or your grandma and measure their fingers too and write it down in your notes so that you know what your family's finger measurements are. Okay, we are measuring in inches today. And since we are fifth graders, let's notice that in inches, you have 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, but then you also have these little lines in here. So in between the inches, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little lines. There's 8 little segments. Those are called eighths. So if you count all the lines, they're eighths. So if your finger goes to here, then your finger is 1 and 1, 2 eighths. Another way you can look at it is in between are different size of lines. So if you count from here and skip a line and go to here and skip a line and go to here and skip a line and go to here, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So then you can say, like, let's say your finger goes to here, then your finger is 1 and 1, 2, 3 out of 4, so 3/4. And the last way you can measure it is you can notice that halfway in between there's a very long line, and that's halfway in between. So you have 1/2, 2/2. So if your finger goes to here, it's 1 and 1/2. Okay, so I wrote mine down, and I wrote mine in, I have some eighths, I have some halves, and then for my family members, I have some eighths and some halves and some fourths. And now if we look at our data information, we might notice that we have collected a lot of information, but it's hard to tell, you know, which ones are the longest fingers and which ones are the shortest fingers. And then if we wanted to ask ourselves, like, what's the most common measurement for fingers, and have we made any mistakes in measuring? We can't really see it here because it all just looks the same, like a bunch of numbers and fractions. So instead, we can use a special tool called a line plot. And our line plot looks like this. So you put the title at the top. You always know what the line plot is saying because on the top, it'll say the title. So this is length of my family's fingers. Then draw a line at the bottom and you can start labeling it. My measurements went from 1 to 5 inches. So I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. If yours goes from 1 to 3 inches, you can just go 1, 2, 3. But just make sure you include all of your data. So if you have something with like 20 on there, then you have to make it big enough to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 20. Okay? Then you can start labeling. Now it's kind of hard to label every single fraction. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5. There's not enough room. So you can just, I kind of wrote it like this to squish it in. And I also, to help myself, wrote the first one and then didn't label the last ones because I could just count it. So you can do whatever works for you. Then I start looking at my data. Now my first measurement was 2 3/8. That was my first measurement. So I go to my dot plot and I find here's 1, here's 2, And then the 8ths are all the little lines. So then I go 2 and 1, 2, 3 out of 8 is 3/8. I go up and I put 1 dot. Then I go to my next piece of data. My next piece of data is 2 and 5/8. So then I go back to my line plot and I say, here's 1, 2, and I'm gonna count all lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 8 is 5/8, and I put another dot. Then I go to the next one and it says 2.5. So then I go to my chart and I find 2, and then I find 1/2, and I put a dot. And I keep putting all the dots until I'm completely done. Now that I have all my dots, I can see very easily which ones are the longest measurements, which ones are the shortest measurements, and which measurements have the most. So on mine, which measurement was the shortest? Well, it's this one right here. This one is 1 and 6/8. 1 and 6/8. So my shortest measurement was 1 and 6/8. And that's very easy to see because it's right here. Then I think to myself, which one is the largest measurement, the longest measurement? And that one, whoa, is way over here at 5 1/4. Now, I can also notice that all of my measurements are right around here. They're all grouped together in a cluster. This one's way out here. This one we call an outlier. That's the one that doesn't really match the others. I mean, have you ever seen somebody walk around and they have like fingers and then one is like way out here? I don't think so. So that makes me think that maybe there's a little problem with my data. So when I look at this more closely, I can think about, is it reasonable? Well, this is 5 1/4 inches. 5 1/4 inches is this long. 5 1/4 inches. Do I have anybody in my family with a finger this long? No, I do not. So that is not reasonable. So I must have made a mistake. So I'm gonna go ahead and cross the outlier out because that one no longer makes sense. And I can even label it. This is called an outlier. Outlier. It doesn't make sense. Now I'm gonna go back to my data and I'm gonna say, what was my problem? Well, here's my 5 1/4. And you know what? Everything else was 2 or just 3. I think what I meant to write is 2 1/4. So I'm gonna go back and measure my family member. And you know what? My suspicion is correct. It was actually 2 1/4. So instead of writing 5 1/4, I'm gonna write 2 1/4. And now I know that I have fixed my data. Now the nice thing about the plot is here, everything just looked like numbers and I couldn't tell that I had made a mistake. But here, it was easy to see that I had made a mistake. That was the outlier. It was easy to see. So now I can go back and I can go to 2 1/4 and I added my dot here. Okay, now everything's clustered again. Everything looks reasonable and correct. And now I can ask myself, now, which one was the longest measurement that was reasonable? And it was 3. 3 was the longest measurement. And then another question that I can easily see on this chart is what was the most common measurement? The one that was the most common is this one. See all of these dots? Like this has only 1 dot, 2 dots, 2 dots, 1 dot, 2 dots. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. There were 5 fingers in this household that were this measurement, which is 2 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 2 5/8. So the most common measurement is 2 5/8. The smallest was this, the biggest was this, and the most common was this. Now, of course, all of that information was very hard for me to pull out of this, but it was very easy for me to pull out of this, and that's why line plots are so helpful. All right, that's it. Enjoy your math today. See you next time. Bye.